5219, which is true regarding the force of lift in steady unaccelerated flight. A. At lower airspeeds, the angle of attack must be less to generate sufficient lift to maintain altitude. B. There is a corresponding indicated airspeed required for every angle of attack to generate sufficient lift to maintain altitude. C. An airfoil will always stall at the same indicated airspeed. Therefore, an increase in weight will require an increase in speed to generate sufficient lift to maintain altitude. The correct answer is B. In a steady, celebrated flight, the force of lift is determined by both the angle of attack and the indicated airspeed. The angle of attack is the angle between the chord line of the wing and the direction of the oncoming airflow. It directly affects the lift generated by the wing. As the angle of attack increases, the lift also increases up to a certain point. However, if the angle of attack becomes too large, the wing can stall and lift production decreases. Indicated airspeed is the airspeed measured by the aircraft's airspeed indicator. It is the primary reference for controlling the aircraft's flight performance. To maintain altitude in steady flight, there is a corresponding indicated airspeed required for every angle of attack. This means that for a specific angle of attack, there is an associated indicated airspeed that will generate sufficient lift to balance the aircraft's weight and maintain altitude. The specific combination of angle of attack and indicated airspeed depends on the aircraft's design, weight, and other factors. 5167. Which statement is true relative to changing angle of attack? A. A decrease in angle of attack will increase pressure below the wing and decrease drag. B. An increase in angle of attack will increase drag. C. An increase in angle of attack will decrease pressure below the wing and increase drag. The correct answer is B. The wing is pushed upward, lifted, as a result of air being diverted downward as it strikes the bottom of the wing. The wing is tipped upward to produce lift, which increases the angle of attack and deflects more air downward. The lift force tilts further towards the back of the airplane as the angle of attack increases, producing drag. 5202. On a wing, the force of lift acts perpendicular to and the force of drag acts parallel to the A. Chord line, B. Flight path, C. Longitudinal axis. The correct answer is B. On a wing, the force of lift acts perpendicular to the flight path, and the force of drag acts parallel to the flight path. The flight path refers to the path followed by the aircraft through the air as it moves forward. The force of lift, which is generated by the wing's shape and angle of attack, acts perpendicular to the flight path. It is the force that counteracts the weight of the aircraft and keeps it in the air. The force of drag, on the other hand, is the resistance encountered by the aircraft as it moves through the air. It acts parallel to the flight path, opposing the forward motion of the aircraft. In steady, level flight, the force of lift is directed upward, perpendicular to the flight path, providing the necessary vertical support for the aircraft. The force of drag acts in the opposite direction of the flight path, opposing the forward motion of the aircraft. Therefore, the correct answer is that on a wing, the force of lift acts perpendicular to the flight path, and the force of drag acts parallel to the flight path. 5218. Which is true regarding the forces acting on an aircraft in a steady-state descent. The sum of all. A. Upward forces are less than the sum of all downward forces. B. Rearward forces are greater than the sum of all forward forces. C. Forward forces are equal to the sum of all rearward forces. The correct answer is C. The sum of the opposing forces in steady-state flight equals 0. All forces acting upward are added up to equal all forces acting downward. All forces moving forward add up to the same amount of forces moving backward. 5280, which is true regarding aerodynamic drag. A. Induced drag is created entirely by air resistance. B. All aerodynamic drag is created entirely by the production of lift. C. Induced drag is a byproduct of lift and is greatly affected by changes in airspeed. The correct answer is C. Aerodynamic drag is the resistance encountered by an aircraft as it moves through the air. It is composed of two main components, parasite drag and induced drag. Parasite drag is caused by various non-lift-producing parts of the aircraft, such as the fuselage, wings, and other protrusions. It includes forms of drag such as form drag, due to the shape of the aircraft, and skin friction drag, due to the friction between the aircraft's surface and the air. Induced drag, on the other hand, is a byproduct of the generation of lift. When an aircraft produces lift, it also generates vortices at the wingtips, creating a pressure difference between the upper and lower surfaces of the wing. This pressure difference contributes to the production of lift, but also results in the generation of induced drag. Unlike parasite drag, which is relatively independent of the aircraft's lift production, induced drag is directly related to the production of lift. It increases as the angle of attack or lift coefficient increases. It is also greatly affected by changes in airspeed. At lower airspeeds, induced drag is typically higher, while at higher airspeeds, it is generally lower. Therefore, the correct answer is that induced drag is a byproduct of lift and is greatly affected by changes in airspeed.